Hello fellow YouTubers, and welcome to episode 7, reading my first self-published novel, Aggravation. It's been quite a wet day today, and there's a little bit of rain falling now, and once again it will be a double bonus for my friend George. When he opened his eyes a few minutes later, he didn't know. All he could see was the blurred pattern of the linoleum and a hint of white light in his peripheral vision. The only sound that of the beat of his heart. His mind alive with the echo of one word: diary, diary, diary. Moving his hands away from his ears, he placed the palms on the floor, then pushed as an aid to righting his torso. Then on his knees, armed by his sides, he looked around, perhaps to satisfy himself that nothing had changed, or maybe he expected to catch a glimpse of an apparition. The cigar, he noticed with a quick turn of his head, remained in its resting place by the kickboard, the plastic zip-top bag on the floor close to his left knee. He picked it up, extended his right arm, intent on gathering the cigar. But his reach fell short, a foot or more. "God damn it," he grumbled. Kneeling as he was, he decided to sidle sideways to bridge the gap. But as willing as his mind was, his legs failed to respond. "Bloody hell," he grimaced. "Legs have gone to sleep, for Christ's sake." To his immediate left was a chair, so he wrapped his left hand round the nearest leg and, with an arcing motion, swept it clear of the table, bringing it to rest directly in front of him, where, with both hands, he turned it around so the seat was facing him. Then, with both hands firmly gripping each side of the wooden seat, pushed, struggled, grunted, and moaned until he finally managed to first sit his right buttock on the seat, where, for a moment or two, he rested before managing to seat himself properly. Then he puffed and panted as he cursed, "Goddamn fucking son of a bitch." Uncomfortable, agitated, in pain, Clyde, for the first time since moving to Welcome, was feeling every year of his 65 years. And as he sat bent low, vigorously rubbing his legs, he carried out a conversation with himself, which to Clyde, too many years living alone, was the most natural thing in the world. "Well, Clyde, so much for Melbourne Cup Day 2010. Yes, a wonderful day, and everyone had a wonderful time but me. My nominated horse didn't finish. The house is haunted. I've been spooked 5 times. Gone walkabout twice. Kissed myself once. Agreed to go camping to a place I don't particularly want to go camping at. And, well, look on the bright side. At least little fuck-knuckle next door will be quiet for a while. I'd prefer if he was quiet all the time, but that's not going to happen, is it? No. And now my legs are surging, it won't be long before I'll have to put up with them god-awful pins and needles, which I detest. And now I can't stop wondering about a diary. What kind of diary do you think it is? Probably a personal one. Unless whichever sister it is kept a diary on the strange and inexplicable. If that's the case, then it wouldn't surprise me if it was an appointment diary to keep track of future meetings with ETs, or maybe the devil himself and his minions. After slowly easing his torso upright, Clyde continued, "But whatever it's about, I wonder where it is. It's all well and good to allude to a diary, but it's no good if I don't know where it is. And besides, what if I do find it? What do I do then? Read it, that goes without saying. Then what?" Clyde contemplated. Yes, what then? A brief pause as he raised his legs a little, wriggled his toes as he gently twirled his feet and shook his legs. Then, when satisfied, lowered his legs, placing his feet flat on the floor. Then, well, it all depends on the contents, doesn't it? Clyde rattled his head. "I suppose so. But then, what difference would it make?" "Yes, what difference would it make?" he mused. Clyde realised that he was getting nowhere, and a different approach was needed. Okay, Clyde, so what do we have here? Well, the house, as much as I don't want to admit it and find hard to believe, is haunted. Now, Bob Lawrence said the house was reported to be haunted. So does that mean haunted by the sisters' ghosts? Or was the house haunted long before they died? Now there's a thought. What if the sisters are haunting me because someone or something was and still is haunting them? And they want me to do something about it? Clyde smiled nervously again. I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I'm having this conversation with myself. Man must be losing his mind. Clyde looked to the ceiling, arms spread, and asked of a God he didn't believe in, "Why me, God? Why me?" And as Clyde lowered his head and arms, as he suddenly struck with a foreboding thought. Oh shit, what if it's still here? Clyde shook his head, despondent. What? What? Where did that come from? He didn't know, it just popped into his head. And now it was there, it wouldn't go away. Trust you to come up with something like that. And knowing my luck, I bet whatever it is, if there is anything at all, is akin to that of the Amityville Horror. Jesus, Clyde clutched his knees and shook his head. Jesus! Then all of a sudden his despondency took a rapid nosedive. Wait on a minute. I remember reading that book, and the occupants took a photo of the house and saw something that wasn't there when they did, and it frightened them. What was it? What was it? Eyes, that's what it was. 2 red eyes. So maybe the sisters took a photograph of the house and saw something that filled them with dread. Or at least thought they did. Probably an aberration. Some trick of the light, or something like that. That they took totally out of context and saw it as an omen, and assumed the house was haunted when it wasn't. Makes sense considering how superstitious they were, or thought to be. Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to take a photograph of the house tomorrow morning, just to see if something is there that can't be seen with the naked eye. With the circulation fully restored to his legs, Clyde was feeling comfortable enough within himself to vacate the kitchen for the comfort of his double bed. He was still doubtful if he could sleep, but there was a chance that if he sat up, fully clothed, of course, with his back well supported by the 4 pillows on the bed, and read, maybe the somnifying effect reading usually had on him would do the same tonight. It was worth a try. 5 minutes later, the unopened book resting on his lap, Clyde was dead to the world. When he opened his eyes, he was looking up at the ceiling, not quite sure where he was. At first he thought he was dreaming, but when he looked at the clock sitting atop the bedside cabinet close to the right side of the bed and noticed the time, 8:05 a.m, he realised it was morning, and the sleep he expected would be denied him had taken him in no time at all. Must have been exhausted, he mumbled. Closing his eyes, he luxuriated in the comfort the bed provided, quite content to remain where he was until one urge or another prompted him to get up. And as he lay, he began to think, asking himself, where could the diary be? Why would it have to be secreted to begin with? What was in it that required stealth on behalf of the writer? Did they both contribute to it? Where could it be? Where would the last surviving sister, Henrietta, put it when she knew all the furniture would be taken away once she died? Where, for Christ's sake? Where would I put something I wanted to hide under such circumstances? In the wall? Under the floor? In the roof cavity? Bury it? Where? Hang on. Did one or the other or both transcribe all that was in the diary onto a computer, then download it all into a memory stick? Then burn the diary and delete the information from the computer? Jesus! If that's the case, then something so compact could be anywhere in countless places. Or maybe I'm being just plain silly. No, not necessarily. Not if there were too many of them to hide. And with that final thought, Clyde got up, dropping the book onto the floor in the process. After placing the book on the cabinet, he turned off the bedside light and made his way to the ensuite where, after relieving himself, he splashed his face with cold water, ran his damp hands across his hair, brushed his hair, then left the ensuite, turning off the light as he went. He turned off every light in the house, leaving the kitchen light until last. With his breakfast behind him, he poured a second mug of tea, placing it and the phone book on the kitchen table where, in less than a minute after seating himself, he had found and written down the number of the surgery. He phoned and made an appointment straight away. 10:45 tomorrow morning. Seated at the kitchen table once again, he noticed the cigar wasn't anywhere to be seen. The plastic zip-top bag was still on the floor, but the cigar had mysteriously disappeared, and he wondered if he had picked it up and tossed it into the tidy after all. He couldn't remember doing that if he did. With curiosity getting the better of him, he checked the tidy, but it wasn't to be found in it. How strange, he thought. Then, strange? He said out loud. Ha! What's strange about that in a house where the strange is commonplace? It is strange, though, he mused. Stranger still is that there isn't the slightest hint of stale tobacco, either. Not a whisper. Just, he inhaled deeply. Lavender. That's what it is. Lavender. Shrugging it off as if it was just one of those things, totally aware that it wasn't, he casually sipped his tea while wondering what he was going to do with himself for the day. First and foremost was to take a photograph of the house, but that wouldn't take any time at all. There wasn't any washing to be done and barely any washing up, but the lawn could probably do with a cut, and maybe it would be a good idea to give it a dose of weed and feed. With his mind made up and his mug empty, he placed it in the sink and went to his office to gather the digital camera, checking the batteries as a matter of course, before making his way to the front gate. The sky, he noticed as he stood with his back touching the gate, was as clear as a bell, save for a hint of white cloud to the northeast, and what little there was well away from the sun. Perfect conditions, he thought, for taking a photograph where any anomalies, should there be any, couldn't possibly be blamed on the weather. Raising the camera and holding it level with and about a foot from his face, he viewed the house as seen from the camera via the LCD screen to the rear, and, after noticing completely satisfied there was nothing that shouldn't be there, touched the shutter release, capturing the image that, a second later, was displayed on the screen, the result of which showed nothing out of the ordinary. He was disappointed that he really didn't expect there would be anything. But just to be sure, and while he was here, he decided to capture a series of shots and be done with it once and for all. Back in his office, seated at his desk, the computer booted up and the camera connected to it, he downloaded the images, 7 in all, and began to scrutinise them. But after a couple of minutes he was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there wasn't the slightest hint of anything remotely connected to the supernatural whatsoever. Not a thing, he said. Nothing at all. After several seconds of drumming his fingers on the desk, he asked himself, why should there be anything? I mean, the camera can only take pictures of what the lens sees. And if I can't see anything, why should the lens? Following a brief pause of contemplation, he said, but how do you explain the ghostly aberrations that appear in photographs that others have taken in the past that weren't there when they took the pictures? For a moment or two he didn't have an answer. Then, because those photographs were taken on film, and the aberration had something to do with the developing process or the emulsion of the film itself. But he wasn't totally convinced. As he sat back in his chair, running thoughts through his head, trying to come up with answers to the questions on the subject he really knew very little of, he suddenly noticed at first what he thought was a reflection of light on the first image. But at closer inspection he saw for what it was. White smoke that had appeared to be coming out of the chimney. Well, where the hell did that come from, he muttered. Diverting his attention from the first image to the second, then on to the third, not wanting to believe what he was seeing, the gradual progression from a puff of smoke to a plume of smoke that, as he looked at the 4 remaining images, from one to the other to the other to the last, gradually began to dissipate until on the final image it was gone. I'll be damned, he said matter-of-factly. I don't believe it, but I'll be damned. For a minute, maybe two, he just sat staring at the images as one would do when faced with the inexplicable, even though the inexplicable was bordering on commonplace. And he was thinking, this can't be real. That perhaps there was a glitch with the pixel configuration or some other logical explanation. But his other self, the true self, was telling him that it was nothing like that at all. Go on, his other self told him. Enlarge the images and see for yourself. After all, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So he did, and it was. But he knew that all along. 5 minutes later, when Clyde had printed copies of the 7 images and had placed them separately on his desk, deciding then to return to the exact same position at the front gate and shoot another series of images. He didn't know what he expected to achieve in doing so, but it just seemed a logical thing to do. But no sooner on arriving at the front and taking up his position, he heard a voice. "Hey Clyde! Hey Clyde!" Oh fuck, he thought. "Hey Clyde, you want to come over and see what I just bought? Spared no expense." Clyde about-faced acknowledged Charlie with a half-hearted way, thinking, fucking loudmouth, as he slotted the camera into his pants pocket before saying, yelling, "Morning, Charlie," then mumbling, "Suppose I'd better. Can't keep putting it off," then yelling, "Okay, Charlie, be right with you." "By God, but how I hate you." Clyde grumbled as he reluctantly made his way across the road, thinking as he approached Charlie waiting at the front gate, I wonder what the dickhead has spared no expense in buying this time. Opening the gate, Charlie boomed, "You wait till you see this, Clyde. Best money can buy, spared no expense." Of course you didn't, you goddamn aggravating shit of a man, Clyde thought, as Charlie closed the gate. "Absolutely fantastic it is, Clyde. You won't believe your eyes." "My eyes have already seen something I don't believe, so I doubt very much what you have will impress me at all." Charlie was so excited that Clyde wouldn't have been surprised if he suddenly started to tap dance as he led the way toward the house, or do a series of backflips or somersaults, or something theatrical at least. He didn't have long to wait. At the front door, come in, Clyde. You're going to love this. I know you will." Stepping into the lounge room, Charlie suddenly propped, spread his arms like a master of ceremonies and yelled, "Ta-da! Ta-da! Isn't it wonderful, Clyde? Isn't it wonderful?" "Oh yeah, absolutely wonderful," Clyde thought enthusiastically. "What do you think? What do you think?" "I think you should stop yelling, put your hearing aid in and stop saying everything twice for Christ's sake." "It's a marvel, Charlie, no doubt about that." "You'll have to speak up, Clyde, I'm hard of hearing, you know." "I said it's a marvel. A masterpiece of modern technology is what it is." "It is, isn't it? That's 8 feet wide, that plasma screen is," he bellowed, placing a hand on the top housing of the screen. "And with the surround sound and the woofer thingy and the Blu-ray and all that sort of stuff, it'll be like being in a cinema, it will." "Yes, well, that's all I need, a fuckwit that's as deaf as a post, with 80 watts, 800 watts, unlimited watts per channel for all I know, at his disposal, living right across the road. Jesus. And I bought 2 cinema-type lounge chairs as well, spared no expense." "I hope the hell you spared no expense on a set of headphones while you were at it." "Take a seat in one of those chairs, Clyde, and I'll put a movie on just so you can see and hear what it's like." I really don't have the time, Charlie. Really I don't. I've got a popcorn maker, a real good one that won't take any time at all to give us something to nibble on. Spared no expense." "Didn't hear a word I said." "I don't have time, Charlie. Now, if I can find the instructions, I'm sure I left them around here somewhere." "Oh, great. That's all I need. Doesn't know how to use the mother of all noisemakers, and now the editor's gone and lost the instruction manuals. Fucking hell. Won't stop him though. No. He'll turn the bloody thing on and somehow manage to get it working. Then he won't be able to remember how to turn it off. Jesus. Please, God, strike this man down, will you? Have to make it some other time, Clyde, after I become familiar with all its workings, okay?" "Okay, Charlie, no problem, I'll leave you to it." Clyde let himself out, muttering to himself, "I bet he doesn't know that I'm gone. Probably won't remember that I was there. Yeah, right. You should be so lucky and pigs might fly." Back on home ground, Clyde set about doing what he was going to do before the interruption, then, as an afterthought, decided to shoot a few shots from the backyard, then returned to his office. After connecting the camera to the USB port and downloading the images, amazed as always by the marvels of modern technology, he checked each of the 16 images and, as before, found nothing but the house and a narrow aspect of the sky. But instead of waiting, he decided to make copies forthwith just to see if the smoke, if it did appear on the computer image, it would appear on the prints as well. And, he thought, to make the impossible even more so, once the copies are made, I'll exit the program, and let's see if the spirit or spirits can weave their magic then. Taking time out after printing and with the prints lying separately on the desk, Clyde made a pot of tea and, as he sat at the kitchen table waiting for the tea to draw, he studied the 7 prints, saying as he did so, I wonder what Sandy will have to say. I can just hear him now. Someone lit a fire and smoke from their fire is all it is. He smiled. When he returned to his office some 20 minutes later, he was disappointed at what he didn't see on the prints. Oh well, he said, I guess there must be a time for even the spirits to rest. Placing the 7 prints on the desk, he took to his chair, double-clicked the Google Chrome icon, then typed white smoke and pressed enter. Not sure what he expected to see with such a vague request, but there was plenty of information, if you happen to be interested in an educational program of that name. Returning to the home page, he typed white smoke supernatural, pressed enter, and in 0.62 of a second began to browse, finding what he was after at the top of the page 4, a glossary of the paranormal. Clicked the tool icon and printed the 6 pages. Thank you very much, Google. And thank you too to the individual who put it all together. Very informative, Clyde said as he read. But after he finished reading, he had to ask himself, but if the white smoke or mist is indicative of a spirit drawing energy from the atmosphere and trying to form into an apparition, does that mean it's the good spirit of the sister or a bad spirit of something or someone else? If it's not the spirit of the sister and it's a good spirit of a parent, then why would the sisters be afraid of that? Unless they were, for whatever reason, deathly afraid of whichever parent it might be. But then it could be a spirit of an outsider. This means the spirit on the prints could be one of 3. That of a deceased parent, the sister who spoke to me, or something entirely different altogether. Something so different, so foreboding and malevolent, that appeared on the photographs or photographs the sisters took of the house, that it put the fear of God into them. Clyde sat back in his chair, sighed, then said, so many questions but no answers. Why can't the spirit manifest, particularly if the spirit is of the sister who spoke to me? After all, according to the glossary, I am experiencing an intelligent haunting. So what's holding it back? Is there something, another entity perhaps, that won't let it do so for some reason? Or am I missing something? Is there something in the images, any image, that is there and has been there ever since the house was built? Or maybe the house is built on hallowed ground or a sacred site and the spirits are stuck between this world and the other side because of it. Jesus, Clyde, you've been watching too many episodes of the supernatural. Help me, Sam and Dean. Come quick. So once again, this time with the aid of a magnifying glass, Clyde scrutinised each and every one of the 23 prints with the concentration of a man trying to etch the Lord's Prayer on a pinhead. But in the end, all he succeeded with was giving himself eye strain bordering on a headache, and a confirmation. There's nothing there besides the smoke on the first 6, he said, sitting back again, folding his arms across his chest as if to say, of course there's nothing there. I knew that all along. After logging off, Clyde picked up the 2-hole punch, checked the papers guide was set for A4, punched 2 holes in the 6 pages of the glossary, retrieved an A4 folder from the bottom left drawer of the desk. I only remember at that moment that he'd already dedicated a folder to the strange and unknown for the clarion clippings on UFO sightings and such, and it was resting in the bookcase across the far side of the room to his right. So without preamble, Then with the 6 pages in hand, he stood up, walked across the room, gathered the folder, opened it, unclipped the 2 chrome rings, placed the pages, closed the rings, and then the folder. Slotted the folder into its resting place, and that's when he saw it. "I'll be damned," he said. There, about 2 feet from the left end of the bookcase, lying on the floor close to the wooden skirting board, was his cigar. "I'll be damned," he said again. Bending low from the waist, his right arm extended, he suddenly noticed an irregularity in the skirting board directly behind where the cigar rested on the floor. No, there were two vertical lines about 6 inches apart, as if that section of board had been removed and replaced. "The diary," he muttered. "It's the hiding place for the diary. Has to be." Less than a minute later, after a quick visit to the kitchen to collect a torch and a blade screwdriver he kept in the pantry, he was on his knees gouging away the filler from the joint to his left, and finding it was hard going. "Should have got a hammer too," he grumbled. "Whichever sister did this sure made a good job of it." Being nothing if not persistent, but not really wanting to get up to go to fetch the hammer, he continued gouging and scraping and gouging, to be rewarded a few minutes later with a breakthrough that quickly became a channel. "Now," he said, "if I can break the seal at the top, I should be able to lever out that section there by breaking the fillet to the right." He did, and was able to do just that, although he wasn't happy that a ragged piece of timber from the face of the board came away as well. "Bloody hell, Clyde, why didn't you get the hammer?" he berated himself. "Because I'm too lazy," he answered, stretching out then lying flat on his stomach. Turning on the torch, he shone the light into the hole, eyes wide, but all he could see was the face of one solitary brick of the front wall, a dusty spider web, and a small gathering of dry mortar powder. Undeterred, he reached out blindly, searching for the screwdriver, found it, poked the blade into the hole, then began to sweep away the powder. Noticed something move, retracted the blade in a reflex act, and thinking whatever it was might be alive and a potential hazard, only realised a second later that it wasn't, and what it was probably what he was searching for. Well, there's only one thing to do, he thought, and that's to reach into the hole and pull it out. So with a final look under torchlight just to satisfy himself that nothing untoward had been drawn toward the opening, he reached in, wrapped his fingers round whatever it was, then quickly withdrew his arm. On his knees once again, he first gently tapped the small package against the knee to dislodge the accumulation of powder and dust, then blew away what he could of the finer residue, discovering that an outer layer of masking tape. In the kitchen, he wiped the package clean using a damp cloth, then seated himself at the table and began to search for the end of the tape, turning the package over ever so slowly until eventually he found it. Then, wishing he had fingernails, tried to scrape loose the corner of the tape. Failed, got a knife from the cutlery drawer, failed again, got a standing knife from the same drawer, then with the skill of a surgeon cut open the skin, peeled it off, found a layer of foil, unwrapped, found another, unwrapped, and there it was. "Hallelujah," he said, "and what a lovely shade of purple it is too." Seated at his desk, the computer booted up, memory stick plugged in, he moved the pointer to my computer icon, double-clicked, waited for the external drive icon to appear, double-clicked it when it did, then he waited, hoping, praying that the sisters had got it right. He didn't have long to wait, and she or they had, and it began such. And that will be the end of episode 7. I'm going to leave it on a cliffhanger. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.